there's a predator that are limiting the growth of the population.
When there's too many people in a country, let's say China, do the leaders decide to weed out them because they can't feed them? No, they find a way to feed them.
Well,
I think
that's why they have one-child policy.
I know.
Okay,
I know.
so for human society or human being, there's a rational thinking of how do you control population, how do you feed them. But for animals like deer, suddenly
they're less than people.
Right. They cannot have rational solutions for themselves. Now, whether human beings' solution is rational or not, you can look at it from deer point of view. You can look at it from the nature tree point of view. You can look at it from human point of view. That's why it becomes debatable.
Effie, who made man the supreme ruler over all the other animals and plant life in the world?
I'm not saying that the human definitely is a necessarily higher order, but
we moved into their territory. The deer were here before us, and so were the Canadian geese that Westchester County
That's
Parks Department.
Another your favorite topic.
Westchester County Parks Department put out a bulletin. We gassed 570 geese because they were pooping on a public golf course.
Pooping is not as bad as when a deer, destroy a car, run across a highway, and so on.
Westchester County, which is led by Westchester County Executive Rob Astorino, put out an order to have these deer rounded up, killed, and so-called fed to the homeless. It sounds a little like Marie Antoinette to me. Let them eat cake. I mean, I don't believe they were fed to the homeless. Such a horrible thing. I'm totally against our
I think
being
from
slaughtered.
And from a humanity or you are definitely a soft-hearted person.
I am very soft-hearted.
But on the other hand, I think humans are rational beings, and we got to be rational. If you see a car hits a deer on the highway, and sometimes, in fact, personally, I did have one time my windshields crashed, and my wife was in tears, and that is very dramatic.
Sir, a deer jumped into my wife's car, hit the windshield, $5,000 damage. I still don't want to see deer killed. We moved in
that's not rational.
Sir, we moved into their territory. They were here before us. Why should we put up rules that we have to kill them?
Now, if you say a human moved into animals' territory,
we did.
And that is not necessarily a good argument, because we are all created by God. Let's say
so let him decide who will live and who
once
will die.
You are in the universe, and the natural development takes place. Natural development, of course, differentiate whether a animal is higher intelligence or lower intelligence, whether it's a higher physical ability or lower physical ability.
And that's why I disagree.
And therefore, there's a natural evolution. Now, the natural evolution of population control usually, is by other species. I mean, itself very, I don't know any species that are able to manage the population growth by itself.
I know.
Give me an example.
I know man is the only species that kills for no reason at all.
But that's not necessarily
and
done
that's why there should be a limitation
for the
on
population control. I hope not. I mean, if that's the case,
that's why I feel there should be a limitation on automatic weapons in America. You know what an M16 is, right?
Right. Yeah.
It's a weapon of war. It was used in Vietnam. It was used in China, Russia. It has no place on the streets of America. And anybody going behind the Second Amendment saying they have a right to bear that, and any group that says
particularly
we
to shoot deer.
to shoot 20 children and 6 angels, 6 teachers. We should have a limitation on that.
So I now know how you stand on the gun control.
Yes, you do know. I shot an M16. It's a weapon of war. For any organization to say that they should not, you shouldn't limit semi-automatic weapons. They're wrong. And the fellow who killed those 20 children and 6 teachers, he was a little mental. His mother bought the guns for him.
Yes, I understand that, yeah.
We should have background checks. And a certain organization lobbied Congress and threatens Congress. Threatens Congress that if you dare vote against background checks, we're going to put a man up and put you out of office. This is why I do not accept the extreme right in the Republican Party.
So on this topic, have you invited guests on your show to debate on this point?
I haven't debated them on this show. I don't know if they would come on with me.
Well, I have not.
I've debated them in person.
Okay. I have not, because I tell you, this is one of those issues. It's very difficult to
what is difficult about
to arrive at a sort of a black and white answer.
Were you in the military, Mr.
I was in the military.
You know what an automatic weapon
But I also believe if America does not have this so-called ownership of a weapon as a protection, our revolution may not be so successful. I just mentioned about 250 years ago, when American Revolution sort of finished in a 2 decades, whereas the Chinese Revolution, even today, still not complete. Okay, China is still divided
don't have
and so forth.
Complete freedom
because 250 years ago, when the British, when the French, when even the United States, America went to China at that time, the Chinese are using knives, right? And when they they start a revolution, they are bringing brooms and kitchen knives. That's not weapon. Therefore, they failed, and they failed miserably many times. So the revolution just prolonged. Even today, I consider Chinese revolution is not complete. You have Taiwan, you have mainland, right? The same people, the same history. Everything is same. There's not an iota difference. The only difference, you might say, is because the Cold War imposed the ideological sort of...
But aren't they doing much better economically? They're producing goods. America owes China $2 trillion today.
They're doing better or not, okay? It's their hard work.
I saw in
and they are emphasis of education, as you see. I mean, education to the Chinese people is so sacred. If you go to China, I was there 2 years ago in Inner Mongolia, and I traveled a bit and so on. I was amazed that people want to learn English.
That's good.
Okay, and I was amazed how dedicated and how focused they are. I was there with some young people, and they were supposed to teach English to the Chinese, organized by my niece. And so I went along with this type of things I see. When we visit this school that teach weekend, English, it's shocking. 3-4-year-old kids, right? Hundreds of them in these buildings, different classrooms, so on. And parents sit in a big hall. So I was, of course, just watching them. So I sit in the big hall. I said, "Wow, these parents weekend. Imagine that in this country, Saturdays, Sundays, if you ask parents to sit in a big hall watching kids learning education, it's not easy."
Effie, we have 100.
Now let me finish this.
Okay.
They were sitting there. Then I realized they were watching a big TV. There's a bunch of screens. And the screens are showing what? Showing each classroom.
Wow.
Their babies, their kids are in these classrooms learning,
That's amazing.
A, B, C, so on. This is, the reason I feel now, I understand, why is the Chinese over the last 30, 40 years able to, come up so fast, rising so fast, and they are becoming sort of manufacturer of the world.
Sure.
I think they earn it. Okay. Whereas now in our country, I serve on school board,
Sure.
and I really
do.
care about education, but I really worried. Our education is too fluffy.
How about 180-day school year?
Exactly,
And
that's
half
a
of them-
problem.
It seems like half of them are shortened days. I'm going to propose that instead of 180-day school year, maybe the teachers' unions will get mad at me.
They
But
definitely will.
A certain amount of hours have to be spent in a classroom. Because if you have so many shortened days due to weather, the kids are being cheated out of time in the classroom. And the teachers are still being paid the same amount of money. You work in a private industry, you only work 6 hours or 4 hours in a day.
Yep.
You don't get paid for a full day.
Yeah.
but,
that topic also is another topic that is
Yes.
very, very thorny.
Yes.
You mentioned union. Union certainly is a good thing, but also
Can be a bad thing.
bad
Joe.
thing.
It can
And
be good.
as you see from Democrats and Republicans, they have different views about how the union
Sure.
is doing.
But unions are good because they ended sweatshops in America. But they can go overboard with too many fringe benefits and salary benefits for teachers, for police, whatever. I mean, they can go overboard, and who pays for it? The average taxpayer. And they have to rein in some of these perks.
Unfortunately,
like
yeah.
you can work in a last year and double your pension. That's ridiculous. You can't do that in IBM, or you can't do it in any private industry that I know about.
Right.
We just had a school superintendent leave Peekskill. He was there for 2 years. He got a separation package when he quit of close to $300,000 for the rest of his life.
Probably
medical.
it was in his contract negotiated.
Yeah, but how
by
come we don't know? How come the average taxpayers doesn't know there's such a sweetheart contract? You can't quit IBM or General Motors and get 90 days vacation, 70 days sick leave, plus all the other fringes that added up to $300,000 for this job.
Yeah, well, I think this, again, is in the education area, this is a big problem that I don't think anybody has solution. I mean, so-called reform, of education
And
has
I'm
been
not
spoken so many years.
anti-education. I'm very pro-education. I want to see our children get the best education possible, but we must keep the costs within reason.
Yeah.
That's why I formed an organization.
But I think the problem is when you mention costs, that's the problem, because we have been always use money as a solution to a problem, and that is fundamentally wrong, particularly in education. It's not the money. It's not that how much money we pay per student, and what kind of package we give to teachers. And because the union or the teachers or everybody still think solution is money, we never solve the problem. You see, I'll give you an example. I watched a YouTube TV movie. I was in tears. In China, China has a lot of area like Tibet and then these mountains areas.
Yes.
The schools are so poor, and they live so far away. So they have to have boarding schools to send the kids to school, and over hundreds of miles. Not like here, we have buses. I mean, little town, a Peekskill or some small town, you have buses to
Well, that's one of the
transport.
things I fought in Peekskill.
Well, let me finish that story. Okay. And this little school, people come all over. Their school is regular, like we are, 9 months. Then they have a summer break. The teacher is so dedicated, have to take care of not only teaching, but the kids living, because they live there.
Wow.
And then when the school's over, the teacher travel with this group of kids to send them home by walking. walking over hundreds miles, over river, over mountain, over field, over rocks. When I saw that little, movie, then I really was into it, because those teachers are dedicated. When they cross a little stream, there's no bridge. They have to figure out how to do it. And they take off their shirt and they tie the kids together. They carry, one teacher carry to pass on the other, and cross over these streams. And that is unbelievable. They do that year after year, because the school every year they come, study, and then they go home. Now, when we, talking about is, we talk about you are paying $17,000 per pupil in this school district. You pay $19,000 school, per pupil in this district, and we are arguing that the performance, of course, the rich people, the rich, district have better student, better education. Totally in the wrong direction, wrong mentality. Thinking that way will never fix the problem of education. I mean, we have now New York City,
Why are the teachers so against this core program that the state wants to put in of mandatory testing to see that the teachers are teaching?
So-called Common Core?
Yeah, I don't know much about that.
Yeah, we have always been, always been having so-called standard learning material for teaching, particularly elementary public schools, right? It's always been there. The only reason that recently the so-called Common Core becomes this fuss, because the issue really is they are going to use the test score to correlate with the teacher's performance, particularly more severely, that could be possibly when the score is really bad, the teacher can be fired.
What happened to tenure?
Exactly. So those are the real issues. So I think
if the teacher isn't teaching up to the performance that is it the state?
So the argument, of course, becomes, well, these test scores are not valid, are not accurate, it could not be used, and so on, rather than, looking at this as objectively. We always should have some kind of standard.
Of course. So why are the teachers' unions fighting so hard against this?
Because they don't want...
It's accountability?
Exactly. Accountability really is the hidden issue. Of course, in the classroom, in teacher-parent discussion, may have diverted the discussion in different ways.
Such as in Peekskill, a Catholic school went out of business here because it wasn't profitable. And they wanted to start a charter school here. And in some places, the charter schools have done much better than the public schools. And you should have seen the fierce fight by the teachers' union in Peekskill to knock that out.
Right, and in the New York City...
And you know what's in that building now? Nothing.
And in the city, of course, sometimes they take a charter school if they discover any little fault with that school, particularly if there's a money corruption issue. It's going to be all over the place.
Del Blasio already is knocking out charter schools.
I think the problem is we do not look at a hidden issue. The hidden issue is usually those, concern about security, about benefits, and so on, rather than really about education.
Wow. I really liked school. I went to public school in Yonkers, by the way, and I'm a product of public school. But I can remember a couple of really good teachers. I remember one who was a strict disciplinarian in my 7th grade class, an English teacher, Mrs. Hartstein. And she says, 2 things about my class you will remember. I will teach you English inside out, how to take a sentence apart, how to spell, and you will know that at the end of the year. But also, you will not like me because I am very strict. And you know, she was right on both counts, and I think I got a pretty
No, there are
good
still many good,
education.
dedicated teachers.
Yeah.
Well, could I just leave the subject now because
Yes.
I tell you,
Yeah.
we don't have much time
Oh, wow.
left.
Sure.
The time runs fast. I want to ask you, in your career, you have produced, 600 shows or so.
Yes.
Besides like Rob Astorino and these type of people we
Many
both admire and
politicians.
so on. Any other show that you
Well, I had
can,
one show
sort of,
that was quite
tell?
notable with a billionaire, Mr. Donald Trump.
Oh yes, he certainly is well known in New York.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And in the world, I mean, he's a real estate developer, very successful. Well, in Shrub Oak, in our local community part of Yorktown,
Right.
he was here for a ribbon cutting ceremony for Trump Senior Development. It's,
I see. So you interviewed
I
him.
did and the town asked me to do cover that as part of the public access show. And I got to speak to Mr. Trump. And I says, Mr. Trump, will you kindly do me a favor? And he says, what is that? And I says, I'd like to honor, and this was before he had his TV show, of being fired by you. He looked at me and he smiled, and he says, what is your name? I says, George Ondeck. He said, George Ondeck, you are fired. And they put that in local papers, and he showed a different side of himself, that he could be funny and he could be a likable person.
So he was in your show. What topic that you talked about?
Oh, well, that basically was the topic. He was doing a grand opening of a development for Capelli that built, but they put his name on it. So you know the development is worth
Well,
a lot more money.
that would be really nice,
And
because I know he's very outspoken and a very intelligent person. If I had an opportunity to have him sitting in the chair here, I would certainly have a good conversation
But
with
I
him.
had many other interesting shows with people less famous than him. I had Eli Manning on my show, the quarterback of the New York Giants. He plays football. I don't know if you follow that.
No, I don't follow football.
But he was at a charity event for Guiding Eyes for the Blind out of Yorktown, where they give dogs away to blind people after they train them for 2 years. And what we think of pro athletes is they're very stuck up and they're better than you, a lot of them. He was the nicest person I ever met. He was friendly, affable. He came up to you, he talked. He didn't say, I'm Eli Manning, I'm better than you.
Yes.
He didn't have an entourage with him. So that was
That's
interesting.
good, yeah.
Another interesting show I've done was Pause for Love, and it's P-A-W-S for love.
Is it not cats or dogs?
Cats. I had Giorgio and Louie on my show, 2 homeless cats. And after they were on, 30 seconds after the show, came on. They were homeless cats. They were adopted.
Very
and
good.
I think of that as
this is
and
really good.
Here's another thing, how the show has helped me. I've had fitness people on from time to time. I just had a Zumba dancer on, an exercise person, teaching me how to lose this. And you know, I've taken advices from some of them over the years. You don't know this, but 3 years ago or 4 years ago, I was about 40 pounds more than I am right now. So I listened to some of their exercises they told me, and I've had nutritionists on, and I've changed my eating style. So the show has helped me as well as my audience.
That's good. Well, I think this is great, because public access, even though we sometimes do not know exactly how many people watch, and we don't have money to do a survey, but I think there are people watching, and particularly when they have nothing else to watch on the commercial stuff.
You know, my friend, I've talked to certain politicians, and they go door to door campaigning, and they've told me, in some residents, senior residents, every second or third door, they said, I saw you on with Mr. Ondeck on that show.
Yeah.
And it does make a big influence on people.
Well, let's do a little plug for ourselves, and I think it's now if you say planning for the future shows, what topic and what areas you're interested in, what kind of people you want to invite to your show, maybe you can speak to my audience here and see whether anybody will come to your show.
I want to, well, what I put in my contract is I want to have people of local interest, no matter what they're doing, where I can do good by presenting them on TV. Whether they be an artist, whether they be a politician, whether they be someone who needs help. An interesting show I've never done, but I would think this would be interesting. To get a person on in America, and I know this exists in Peekskill, who is homeless, to talk about his experience.
That's interesting, yeah.
Wouldn't that be an interesting?
Yes.
And
good.
Actually, people, topics, and anything of local interest where I feel I'm helping the community know more about. Parades I like too.
Yeah, good.
New
All right.
businesses
I will also plug in for myself. I am actually right now interested, and I have a potential guest coming to talk about mortgage.
Oh, yes.
This mortgage issue, as you know, since the 2008 crash and Obama trying to help and so on.
That's President
the
Obama.
Whole application of mortgage becomes a nightmare. If you don't believe me, you go try to apply for mortgage. You know what kind of they call the hooplas or loops you have to jump through. And I have actually done a interesting calculation. The amount of hours people involved to approve a mortgage, let's say $200,000. Sometimes I wonder, where is the profit for these people? They spend hours, days, and weeks. So that's my plug, okay? And well, time is running out, and you have heard Mr. Ondeck, and his show is continuing, and we would like to invite you to our shows, and we want you to understand public access is a good media, and you should support it, and we will continue to do shows for you. Thank you for watching.
Right,
thank you.
Thank you for inviting me.
This ending is a little abrupt because, you know, we just have good things to talk about.
Yes.
And it cannot stop.
We can never stop freedom of speech.
Right.
Thank God for our flag that we are able to speak.
And so
thanks to cable
running a show, of course, sometimes it depends on volunteers. You and I should plug in to ask people volunteer and help this public access production.
Definitely. Yeah. I'm so thankful for our volunteers, and we are volunteers. We do this without the benefit of pay because we believe in our people.